Second, so then, are they gonna be approved?
Trent, that's the analyst invitation. Did you see that?
He's all set. Okay, second,
Hey, everyone, it's 7:02.
Trent, that's
And
the-
all this. And we'll start with pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our first item on agenda tonight is audience and citizens. I don't see any cameras here, but anybody online? Sure. I think we can pass that. Next item are the reports from student board reps who are not here tonight.
Then is preparing for a dance competition, and Samantha is playing on the rescheduled basketball game that was rescheduled for this evening.
The reports were in the packet.
There, yes, they said the reports are still good to go.
Okay, great. Okay, moving on, got that, correspondence, yeah.
We do some correspondence. The first thing on the clipboard, there was an interesting article that was in the Cave Journal, written by the superintendent from Bloomfield. It's called Key Productive Superintendent Board Chair. I think it's covered, but I think relationships, basically stay your lane. So there's just some, it was a good article, and there's something of particular interest I thought we should look at, which relates to our audience of citizen sheet on the back of our agenda. So you can just read that. It's their statement that I thought maybe we could do some of all the. I'm sorry, what it relates to our, what it says is, quote, we are here to set goals, listen to reports of the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, and personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. We are not here to make management decisions or solve the problems of individuals. Management is responsibility of the superintendent. So, yeah, so it's a brief article. You can look over quickly if you haven't already seen it. There are also two emails from, one from a staff member and one from a resident, a parent, who was actually addressed to Trevor. And they were both the same kind of content, asking if they could in any way further participate in the superintendent search process. So Trevor did respond to both of them. So those letters are both on here. Pass it around. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Meeting minutes. I'm looking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from December 12th, 2023. Is that a second? Second. Any discussion? Being no questions, all those in favor of minutes? Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Thank you. So our first big item tonight is our 2024-25 budget presentation.
Is our big item. And I brought a lot of my friends to help me out because my voice is not what it should be. And as you've heard, I get a little bit of a cough. So Dr. Bachman is here, Dr. Fletcher is here, Molly and his authority. And then online we have Dr. Anastasia and Mr. Sutman. And unlike other years where I've kind of done this with Julie's help, this year it's going to be some me, some of the team, and Pam. And hopefully that will be, maybe that's a model for the future. I don't know, but I really appreciate everybody being available tonight to help present this 24-25 budget. I don't know, Karina, if you have anything that you want to say from the budget fiscal committee before we start?
No, I may later, but yeah, no, I don't have anything to preface the presentation. Thank you.
And for anybody who's new to the process, usually the full board hears this either once or twice. We have gone 3 times and sometimes with caps. We can have a bit of a deadline in that the Board of Finance wants to hear from us the first week in February. They have to put us on their agenda for the first week in February. Other than that, this board can hear it tonight, ask us questions, bring answers back, come back to a board meeting, you can take it back to the budget fiscal committee meeting for work to, I don't know, tear things down or add money somewhere. So any of those things are possible, and this is our first time through. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and kind of you're driving?
I'm gonna drive.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to begin by thanking, Ellen Sturdy, first of all, who, is the keeper of all things budget. I also want to thank Julie Pendleton for the work she put in on this. And all of the administrative team who, worked very hard to focus on our 3 strategic plan goals and, put together a fiscally responsible budget that also supports programming, students, and the staff. As you know, our 3 strategic plan goals drive everything. They certainly drive our budget requests. And teachers and administrators know that when they submit their budget requests, they have to tie those requests to our strategic plan goals. And so these are really important to the process. And they're really important to what gets kept in the budget and what doesn't get kept in the budget. And with that, we're going to slide, and Krista and Kareem, if you could please move us forward.
Sure. So our first goal is around equity, and we've taken many steps to progress this goal over the last several years. As you know, Old Saybrook has the 2nd highest rate of ML population increase in the state over the last 10 years. So we've had to adjust our instruction and our practices in the classrooms, as well as our interactions with families, to make sure that we're providing everybody with an equitable experience. So a couple of things that we've done is an intake process and an individual learning plan pilot to help support multilingual families and students as they come into our district. We've done a lot with professional development for scaffolding, district-wide and within buildings, to support our multilingual learners. We've worked on rigorous content and academic vocabulary and teaching those directly to students within the context of the academics that are occurring in the classroom, as well as focusing on learning targets across the district, where we've really supported students' ownership for learning and understanding where they need to get to by the end of a lesson and by the end of the unit. These should be aligned to our standards and support students learning across the board. Thanks.
And a lot of what we've done inside of this has been trying to use as many hands to lighten the load, especially knowing that we have a growing multilingual population. So we're trying to provide as much professional development as possible for all of our teachers and support staff. That way we have a lot of experts in supporting.
And I just would like to say that, remember that happy group that we identified in our previous board meeting, as being concerned about based on performance, in math, but also in reading language arts. And so we identified this as our target group before we knew the results of that, because we felt that that was a concern that we had.
Is appropriate that question, sure, wait,
Up to you.
I guess you all. No?
It should take off. Krista, you said that, we're 2nd in the state. Is that in terms of percentage of our student population to multilingual learners, or just numerical? Pardon?
Over time, the growth rate over time.
Growth rate over, oh, the highest growth rate. Okay, and just as a hypothetical question, if I'm a 10-year-old student and I report to Old Saybrook schools and I don't understand English at all, what sort of path do I get to become integrated into the standardization of our classes?
That's a great question. Well, the intake process is actually one of the things that we started. So that starts with us meeting with families and having them share with us the students' strengths, areas of challenge, their background, any needs that they might have. Then from there, the students are in just a general education classroom. They have a variety of different tools that they can use to help participate in class. And a lot of it goes through the Chromebook when they first start. They're doing a lot of translation through Google Translate. The teachers have worked with Cree and with some outside folks, as well as doing some PD in the schools, focusing on how to help students apply the rigorous content, but in a way that they can. So things like providing different ways for them to have input and gather information, whether that's through visuals or teaching vocabulary, translating some materials as needed, and then providing them with ways to be able to share their ideas as well, whether that's sentence stems or through graphics and graphic organizers and so forth. So they are actually integrated in right from the beginning. And that gives them the opportunity to learn the language and really have a necessity to learn the language. And families have said, as we've gotten feedback about our intake process and about our individual learning plans, that that's one of the things that they think is valuable, is that they feel like students need to be with children who are speaking English and have that opportunity to practice the language.
I just want to add a little anecdote. I was at the middle school last week, observing a teacher, and she asked me to pay particular attention to how she was working with her student, an ML student. And they were doing biographies on people that had overcome conflicts, and the student's book was in native language, which made it easier for the student to connect, but everything else was in English. And I noticed that she used a lot of scaffolding for the whole class that benefited that student. She also used for that student a lot of visuals, and she even used a lot of gestures, you know. And the student, I watched the student pretty closely because she asked me to, and the student really was fitting in scaffolding. Could you define scaffolding? Kristen, would you like to define?
Sure. So I would say when we talked about equity and we've talked about how they put in place certainly. Do you remember the equity picture with the blocks? Did you see that? And how the shorter student had to stand on the crate so they could see over the fence. Now, obviously, our goal is to eventually remove the fence, but in this case, it might be something like that that helps the student be able to participate in a rigorous lesson, even though that they might have a language barrier. So that could be having translated materials. It could be having those sentence stems started so that they can finish and use the vocabulary that they do have in English. It could be the visuals, the gestures, all of those could be considered scaffolds.
Thank you. Good question. So often you have children that are coming into the district and their families don't speak English. So how do we work to have somebody that translates for those families when they're doing the intake form? That's one of the.
So what we've been doing so far is utilizing Melissa Vasquez for some of those. I'd like to eventually shift that so it's more interaction between the teachers and those parents themselves, but the parents do, I think there's a comfort level for them in that, and they've expressed that. So I think we need to find additional ways to be able to communicate without it just being through Melissa. And honestly, having those meetings is really helpful because they feel more connected, I think, to everybody that's.
Another question is that, and this is just informational, and thanks for expanding it, thinking about it, is that, so the children that are coming in that are not native speakers, just say our multilingual population is Spanish, let's just say we do have staff members. So those children sometimes considered as part of a 504 or an IEP where they're taken out and then they're working on curriculum, you know, in their own language, and then sometimes that's something that's integrated back into the classroom.
So at this point, we don't, screw it, both of them are Spanish. At this point, what we do at the middle school, and I believe it's a similar process at Goodwin, is we have a tutor. So teachers might, they have it built into their schedule that they see that tutor during the day. And teachers may provide that tutor with, okay, this is what we're working on. Can you support them with this piece? But it's not through a 504 or an IEP.
Yeah, the 504 and IEP process are completely separate from multilingual learning. The multilingual education that our students who are at any of the proficiency levels is still just our regular education process. So those students at this point, we don't have the totals, we don't have the language. We haven't hit the language threshold to have a bilingual classroom. So our students are integrated throughout the classroom, so they're not receiving any other full-out services besides being with one of our TESOL or bilingual.
So one of the tutors, they're usually proficient in the language of the kid.
So in a bilingual program, that would be a component of it, plus after this.
Okay, thanks.
And moving on to strategic plan goal number 2, Dr. Fletcher and Mr. A.
Oh, good evening, everybody. So kind of piggybacking on what Krista was talking about in terms of our focus at the high school, high quality instruction, we've been spending a lot of time with learning targets and formative assessment. and moving beyond just posting the learning target to students having some ownership of it, maybe even planning the learning target and understanding what the next steps are. We're utilizing instructional rounds to kind of bolster that with the learning targets, going in with a problem of practice, theorizing on something or focusing on perhaps, maybe extending and making sure all students are involved in the lesson to make sure that equity piece is in place. So that may be our focus lens. And then we come away with an if-then statement based upon the data we gather as a group. And we've been implementing PDSA cycles, another acronym for you. Plan, Do, Study, Act through our PLCs, our professional learning communities that we have groups of. So the teachers met a couple months ago. They identified a problem of practice or something they want to improve within the building in line with the strategic plan, and they're gathering data and compiling that data and then making some assumptions based on that, deciding on a strategy to push forward. So it may be, for instance, a tier 1 practice for our ML population. Maybe there's 3 ML students that don't speak any English at all. What are some strategies to kind of infuse them in the lessons and get them really active? They'll try that for a span of a few weeks, gather more data and make adjustments as necessary. And that's going to be an ongoing process. We're collecting the data from semester 1 now, and then after midterm exams, which are happening right now, the PLCs will regroup and form another hypothesis and then spend 4 to 6 weeks gathering more data. And that data is used to inform instruction. And we're also trying to include students in that as well, based upon their performance in the classroom or where they are with 21st century skills or the standards, setting their own learning goals and conferencing with teachers to help improve their learning as well.
Sarah? So our third goal in our strategic plan is a safe and supportive environment for all students. And we've made some great progress in determining different ways to engage students and create the feeling of belonging in the school system, the school classes. We have lunch bunches that have been created, not only with our multi-language learners, but our English-speaking students to help, again, create those connections across the district. We have specific advisory lessons that are aimed at, again, those inclusion models and inclusion of not only students with different languages, but disabilities as well. And at Goodwin, we've worked to incorporate responsive classroom into the day-to-day of each and every classroom, so that each student is getting the same, I would say, direction as each other. So they work really hard to be that consistent across the district or across the school.
But, and this is where we highlight our programs. We always like to tell, we know Board of Education, but we like to make sure that our other audiences that we'll be presenting this to know where we spend our resources. And so we'd like to highlight something at each school during this presentation, and we'll just have the administrators walk through, starting with the high school.
Thank you. Just click on the link. So we offer 9 advanced placement courses. We also have, I believe it's 8 ECE, and the difference is AP is the, you kind of work toward the big exam at the end, and it's rated on a score of 1 through 5, 5 being the highest. And you can see the percentages we scored in 2023. ECE is a little different. It's the early college experience. It's more curriculum based, and the assessments are built within the course, and you have to get at least a B in the course. And proud to say that 100% of our students enrolled in ECE courses got the credit. We had 20 students earn the seal of biliteracy, and you can see our athletic program. I guess our soccer team did pretty well this year, the 5th championship in a row, which is uncanny to even hear that. And then this piece always astounds me. I remember my first year here, when we totaled up the number of scholarships and awards from the entire Old Saybrook community that our kids garner and earn, it just spoke to the supportive community. So over $200,000 in scholarships this past year.
Small.
It's nice to put together, but it is very urgently.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. It was garbled.
It was nothing about you.
Yeah, you did a
That
nice
Oh.
presentation.
itself is difficult to read, and so we can tweak the next presentation.
I was straining for my end too, so don't feel bad.
I stopped trying. I believe you.
The dollar glasses aren't working tonight, so.
I have to move on.
Okay, so some highlights from the middle schools. We've seen a great improvement in behavior across the building. Our expectations have been met with high success by our students through our PBIS programs, advisory programs, and so forth. In 8th grade, we started a leadership group. We believe that this actually is part of one of the reasons why we've seen the change in the behavior of the students. This group of students applies for the program. They learn key leadership skills. They meet with local leaders in the community and beyond the community and have to apply those and be models for the other students. And that's really made a positive difference in our 8th grade. We've also made a lot of community connections. Main Street Math would be an example of that, where our 5th graders are going out into town, meeting with local business leaders again and finding out how math is used in their own settings and those businesses. And then the students are creating their own businesses and applying that math throughout the school year and connecting that back to what they're learning in the math classroom.
Next question.
Sure.
Oh, I feel like I've had this exact same presentation multiple times on the 3 strategic goals, which are great. They are our 3 strategic goals. And on our students in the middle school, you say we've seen changes. Changes since the last time I've had this report, or the same data as the last report?
I would say when I'm talking about behavior data, we're talking about last year's behavior data compared to this year's.
Get your report behavior. This was true in districts across the state post-COVID,
Right.
and the middle school, all 3 schools, but the middle school in particular, focused on making kids part of the solution, which is a typical middle school thing to do. And they were able to achieve their goals that were set through the climate survey and through the team that does that work each year.
And I think too, Steve, you have heard this, because Krista made a presentation about that leadership program and the effect on behavior.
Right.
I think these examples are being shared in support of the budget presentation. And so I could be wrong,
Yeah.
but that's, I think, how we should interpret it, is that they're sharing examples from the previous year to support where money has been spent and where money will continue to be allocated. So that's why I think that a lot of what you'll hear is repetitive of some presentations we've heard here in our board meetings.
Right. And that, remember that we this presentation, you're not our only audience, you're our first audience, our second audience. And then it's Board of Finance and the community at large, and they need a lot of this background information, and we want you to know what that's gonna look like. We don't wanna just shock
Yeah,
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, it's a good question.
Clarify.
Goodwin School question?
Good evening, everyone. So you'll see in our various programs where large buckets of money is spent. Certainly, we are integrating a new program called ARC, and that's the American Reading Company. As you know from Dr. Fletcher, that we're implementing a new program as a result of a state mandate. So we are halfway through that, and we continue to evaluate where we are and how the students are performing with that new program. Another big program is our math program called Bridges, which is not new to us, but that is a purchase that we make every year. Along with all those other programs, you know that we have 5 specials classes, along with every student has Spanish every day for 15 minutes. We've also incorporated a responsive classroom. This year, we're looking specifically at logical consequences. So that is ongoing. We have multiple clubs running this year. We have a cricket club, which is essentially a printer that cuts that cuts out different shapes, letters, and students are making creative designs and banners and such. In the cricket club, we have a music club, we have art club as well. You've heard about our Goodwin Buddies program that is up and running that supports students after school that may need some support from high school students. And then, of course, we also partner with various programs, with the YMCA, with Youth and Family Services, with Park and Rec. We partner with the PTA. So we have outside resources as well that are supporting all of our programming.
Hudson, you did a nice job presenting, but for me, only two of the things he spoke to were on this slide. Is he, like, you know what I mean? I would think
Yeah.
that when
So what I,
his audio would support the visual.
yeah, so what I did, is I took notes on what he just said because he will always be with me when I am presenting it. And I will reference everything here plus what he just said.
Just a quick question, and this. It is a quick, I don't expect in-depth at all in the future. So, Hudson mentioned, continuing funding bridges for math. We know we've got some issues with math, and I'm just wondering if we're looking at other programs or we're going to continue to fund something that's like getting us where we need to be, just high level.
So we're still looking at the data. The data is in support of the bridges, continuing bridges inside of grade 3 and 4. Our data does support that students have been growing at what the post grade level in. So I think that we will continue to support that because in Goodwin schools, we're not seeing a decline in that school.
Your question
I can speak to that for a second too, if it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're doing something different as well. Also partnering with Dr. Cree, that Ellen Sumbe, who is our math interventionist, instead of working just with small groups of kids who may need some remediations and some support, each Bridges unit has a screener at the beginning. So we're looking at the results of those screeners at the very beginning, and Ellen is going into the classrooms to support the students that are showing up on that screener that may be missing a few key concepts so that we can boost them at the very beginning so they do better on the end assessment. So it's a different tactic that we're trying, although it's the same curriculum. We're trying to support students in a different way. We're just not doing the same thing that we've always done.
And I'd like to point out that our Bridges program has been with us a while. What we saw in math scores this year, as Dr. Fletcher said, not at Goodwin School, but what we saw in some of our anomalies that we saw this year, it would be ill-advised for us to jump ship on a program for 1 year, just like we didn't make any assumptions when we had that spike year in 18-19, by the way, using the same program. So, and since the cat's out of the bag, the article that we all saw in the paper was unfortunately just taken from this board meeting, and comments like, so our scores are relatively flat, we're not included, because overall our scores are flat. Are we happy about that? We are not happy about that, but it is not this tumbling decline that one might think it is looking at that article. And Dr. Fletcher just wrote and sent to the staff a really good letter today, which we can share with the board, describing what the reality of our scores is. So we'll share that with you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then. Extracurriculars I'll take, and then my team can help me. I think the biggest thing that we did this year that has a budgetary impact is that we added the late buses back. And if you remember, that took a little negotiating to get done because bus drivers are at a premium. But we felt that was important to support goal number 1, equity, and goal number 3, SEL. And so I want to highlight that as a real victory. We haven't done an official study of numbers of riders yet, but at the very least, the opportunities are there for all students. I cannot read that slide whatsoever. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I lost the ability to do that about 10 years ago.
Updated emergency action plans and
Oh,
protocols to
yeah,
create
so,
best
I'm just gonna get up. Thank you, Chris.
Are those clickable buttons or they're just,
And it'll be easier for me. Yeah. So. Brenda Saunders is working on a couple of goals this year. One is building leadership capacity amongst people, students who have official leadership titles. So if you're a captain, what does that mean? He's having captains meetings regularly. They're making decisions both within athletics and outside of athletics that impact the high school. He's taking them to training opportunities. He's really moving that initiative forward. The state asked us to have emergency action plans for all athletic opportunities, which include everything from how does somebody call an ambulance if something happens to an athlete? What is your training protocol? Where can we find the equipment if something happens? How do you get people off the field? Brendan took that on himself, completed it, submitted it. It actually did that win an award. That won an award at CAPE, that document. Yeah.
For the handbook category.
Right. So a pretty impressive first time that he was able to get that done and so successfully. We increased the number of clubs all the time. This board committed money to that 6-7 years ago, where we said we want to be able to move quickly and institute clubs when students have interest. And so we've been doing that. We've been creating clubs, and sometimes we have to then also collapse a club because we lose students, but we create them based on kids' interests. And we're able to do that quickly because we have that MOU with the union that allows me to sit down with the union president and decide what is an appropriate stipend. We use the stipend list and we just get it going. And that means kids can be engaged in things that they're interested in. This one I can't speak to too much, but he has been upgrading training and tools available to coaches for training. And I would have to say that the training documentation that comes up here to central office is very well done. Evaluations are very well done on coaches, and so we get a lot of really good information. And for the first time these past 2 years, and I think this is partly budgetary, we have all our coaches in place, like early, so that they're communicating with kids early. That's something that I'm really pleased to see happening. We did increase some of our salaries in that area, but they're still not anywhere near the amount of work that coaches do. We're looking into a new evaluation process for coaches and activity advisors at this time, and there's some expense associated with that, not a significant amount, but some. And then we had this opportunity to explore funding for sports outside of what we traditionally offer. I think the theme for extracurricular is we're trying to be as creative as possible and as responsive as possible.
when you say extracurricular, Jan, does that include things like the drama club or the choruses? Okay.
Yes, yep. Brendan is loosely in charge of all of that. Of course, the principals play a significant role too. But he's loosely in charge of all of
So, supporting emotional, physical, and social well-being. Of course, this is the category where our school counselors, our school psychologists, our social workers, that is really where they do the bulk of their work. And we are very lucky to continue to have a strong presence for our students, especially the increased mental health needs of our students across the district, across the state and country. And specifically, we're continuing to use the DESA as a SEL screener. We also use the BI, which is the Beck Anxiety Inventory, every 2 years to monitor students. We're working to expand Unified Sports and Perfect Pals, which is a collaboration for students with disabilities and their neurotypical peers. We're looking at a variety of data collection and progress monitoring tools for students with disabilities, and this kind of coincides with what CT says, the new special education data collection program is going to require of special education teachers and regular education teachers moving forward. And continuing to look at and focus on meaningful access and inclusion for students with disabilities, and along with students with disabilities that will, into our multilingual group of students as well. What's good for our students, our ML students, is also really good for our students with special needs.
Red?
I think you're looking at slide 7 now, class of 2023.
Yep.
All right, so the next 2 slides actually focus on, for a small comprehensive high school, the challenge is meeting the needs of all students and setting them on their pathway after graduation. So you're going to see a mix of colleges and universities that students have will be attending or are attending now. And we do get a wide variety from community college all the way up through the Ivy Leagues. And our universities. We also try and pipeline to trade schools as well, and a lot of energy and time has gone into planning for next year with the work this year that Dr. Fletcher has done with the tech department in terms of assessing what we have in place and what we could be in place to help our kids with the trades and with careers, say welding or pipe fitting or what have you. A lot of energy has gone into that. We have students who go off to the military. We have our own transition programs for our 18 to 21 students and the workforce. Some go off to jobs and make careers of it. So that's where the 21st century skills come in, the soft skills. That's where the independence comes in that we hope our students get along the way, ties directly to the strategic plan and what we hope our vision of the learner is. We do our best to meet the needs by meeting with the students early. We use programs through guidance, through college and career readiness, through the capstone program, all to let them sort of experiment, see what they like. And more importantly, perhaps the capstone leads down a road they don't like. And instead of spending thousands at college, they find something new for that pathway.
Thank you, Joe. And yeah, that's exactly the point, is that in order to offer a comprehensive high school, our high school students are the most effective to educate in the district. In order to offer a comprehensive high school, you need to have the resources to do it. You need to have the classes that the students are interested in, and that technology education piece that Joe just alluded to. You're going to get a presentation on that very soon. But we have done some very special work in that area this year, thanks to Dr. Fletcher and Nick Sagnella and the rest of the tech ed department. I think we're going to have some even better opportunities for students in the coming year.
Here's my question, and I know that Jan usually does exit interviews for students.
Yep.
In terms of what our high school offered or what they could offer, and so maybe as part of their recommendations or their reflections incorporated in terms of the past offerings, and we would know better.
Yeah, always.
What they will be recommending, and that might be something that, to present at some point, is that we say student voice, and it's actually student voice in terms of even when they leave Old Saybrook, when they come back, we used to do sort of an alumni review. What do you think? Did we prepare you? What is it that you needed to be better equipped to do? And so that might be something that maybe during the budget presentation, families are like, wow, they're really interested in taking what the students feel that they didn't get or did get, but
all the time we incorporate what we learn in those exit interviews. There is language from students in our strategic plan. There's language from students. There are courses that have been developed based on student interest. And as I said, the extracurricular pieces there. The work that we're doing on tech ed this year really came from students who used to be very complimentary about the robust programming, and then those compliments seem to dry up. That's not discrediting the teachers. It's that the world is changing around us and we need to change with it. So as manufacturing takes on a very new look than what it used to be, the kids are aware of that, and that's the kind of manufacturing they want to study, and that's what we're looking into. That came from the kids. This slide, I'm not gonna dwell on. You see this slide every year. This slide really is meant for outside audiences. We go through a very specific process and that process starts in July. I mean, when we set our goals for the year, we look at our plan. How are we doing? How are our kids doing? Where do we need to set new goals? How much of those goals gonna cost us? And then we go through our process, starting with the, you know, what do we need? What do the kids in front of us need right now? What does it cost to run this place? And we do that sustained services budget where I say, tell me what it's gonna cost us to open the doors next year if we do nothing different. And then we figure out how to do things different so we can achieve any cost savings that are possible. Unless there's a question, we'll go to the next one. Again, this is a slide that you used to seeing. We start with a zero-based budget. I get very frustrated when I see a budget that looks suspiciously like 10% over last year, because that's not how we're supposed to budget. You're really supposed to do the hard work of looking at what the needs are. Project out as far as you can as to what we're going to need in the future, what's coming down the pipe. That's really how my original interest in legislation came to be, because I wanted to be ahead of the curve instead of behind it. At policy meeting today, we were looking at the requirement now that the class of 2027 has to have a personal finance class. Check, that's been done for a couple of years now. That's the best way to be, is ahead of the curve, right? Even to some degree, our pre-K program with 4-year-olds getting, you know, pre-K. That really is about being ahead of the curve because there's more and more emphasis at the state level being put on that population. You know, this year you have the central office transitions and there's cost associated with that, of course. You know, we have 2 folks who are going to be moving into interim positions, and we have a new superintendent coming in. We did add dollars to the legal consulting line because of that, because typically a new superintendent will be more reliant on the board attorney in the first year or 2. We have the teacher evaluation plan, which is still in flux and will need to be put to rest and ready to go in the fall. And of course, the science of reading, K-3 science of reading that has been legislated, and then the Department of Education mandated certain programs. Dr. Fletcher and I, Tuesday on the snow day, we met with the SDE again to try to make our case for why we like what we're doing and how we could supplement it. And they thanked us very much for this. But I met today with Representative Curry and a few other superintendents, and we talked about that again. And we said, we don't object to the science of reading. We just think there's another way to get to it. It's not necessarily a canned program that costs our district hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay. Anything else on this slide? Historical enrollment data. A slide you see every year. And you want me to do this one? Yes, please.
Okay. Moment. So yes, this is a slide that you see each year. We have 3 specific categories of students. Special education, and those were our students with individualized education plans. Our students who have 504 plans, which are more temporary circumstances.
I'm special education.
Outside of special education. And our free and reduced qualified students as a percentage of our population. Our most recent numbers, you can see our special education numbers are increased as a percentage slightly. Based on our number has stayed flat, but our overall enrollment has reduced. Our 504 students has remained pretty consistent as a percentage. And our free and reduced has also remained fairly consistent within a percentage point from the prior year. Keeping in mind that any one student that is classified under special ed 504 or free and reduced in these lines could potentially be in 1, 2, or potentially all 3 groups perhaps. So that you can't look at them adding them up together and saying that those total percentages are a much larger part of our population. They're not. There is some overlap. Any questions?
We are bucking the trend in the state on special education. Special education numbers, 8% wise are going up, we remain relatively flat. I think the big surprise for the general community is the percentage of students on free and reduced lunch. I don't think you would get too many citizens in the town of Old Saybrook who would think that our number was a quarter of our students. And I think that we have to remember, and when we tell our story about why we need what we need, these are students who often will need additional support from us. And so that needs to be part of all of our story.
And a piggyback on which is, this is the same thing with our multilingual learners, our special education population, our multilingual learners, and our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. Those are the students that represent the high needs category that we spoke about during the index. So these are our students who we are trying to identify and make sure that we are providing the support for them. So this is the graphic to what Dr. Bachman was speaking to with the equity slide. Like we do have a fastest growing population with respect to our percent of students enrolled. So we see that we're using our October 1 number. So there might be a slight change currently, but October 1st is a common reporting date. So using that date, we see that we have 77 ML learners throughout the district. And knowing that if we stay along this trend, we're just going to see this grow. So this is an area that we have identified that we are working towards supporting. But as Superintendent Bergio said, this is areas where we do have to put our knowledge to support these students and those students.
What is that line, multilingual learners by building mean on this slide?
That is a link to a chart.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the actual numbers
When you're looking
of
at,
that 77.
yes.
Good, I'm glad you have that here.
And the largest concentration of our ML learners actually.
Let's use it.
Thank you.
Say that again, sorry.
So it's the largest. Sabotaging. The largest concentration of our ML learners are at Goodwin School, but we have to know they're just going to travel upwards.
Right.
Throughout the middle school into the high school. So this is where all of the professional learning that we have done is trying to really be ahead of the curve, right? Because we know that these students are going to travel up. There's going to be less time for these students. And what I mean by that is as students start moving from elementary school to middle school, high school, you start dealing with credits. And now they have to be in certain classes at certain times, right? Goodwin, we have more flexibility and post themselves for a little extra session of learning with our TESOL tutors. But we're trying to make sure that our classroom teachers have what they need to support these students because there is no special programs that they're being ushered on to. They're part of the learning inside the classroom. So our teachers need to be well equipped with that instructional toolbox to be able to meet the needs of these students. And this instruction that they get is the same instruction that will support our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, as well as our students who are identified with disabilities.
So question, I know I had raised before, but are you able to share the concentration of propensity of one particular language that seems to permeate in Old Saybrook as a part of that multilingual group?
Right now, Spanish is the dominant language.
I think so.
Yeah.
Far away.
Yeah, and then some of the others might be sort of one, so are.
Ukrainian.
That is already.
Ukrainian.
So I'm trying to think of who.
Portuguese.
Yeah, it's Spanish.
You have some,
That's probably the highest one.
Farsi, we have Farsi, but Spanish far and away. But remember, many of our Spanish speaking students are coming from Central America, but not all. And so even amongst that population, you have a variety of dialects. And so that's why we're spending so much effort, energy, and money on making sure that, not so much that our staff speaks their language, but that our staff has the tools to communicate with them and get them to learn it by scaffolding.
Question, what's the population of Commencement?
We're around
There's no question, this population of students support, and we have an extreme focus on it. What's dramatic about this slide is that it's overall less than 10% of the population. And so are we providing the support? And I think this question sort of came up during the math presentation last meeting. Are we providing the support necessary to the remaining, probably, is it 70% of other students who are probably not performing as well as they might, you know what I mean? Because that may be a question that's asked, that like we are putting so much time, resources, funding to 7% of our population. And so are we, perhaps some of this is a rhetorical question, but are we putting the resources to the other?
I think that's why we're spending so much time talking about these populations in this budget, because these are additional asks. So we're not supplanting, we're not taking from one to support the other.
For more,
We're asking for more to provide more.
It's a good distinction, yeah.
Do you have an idea, not that this would change anything, right? We have to offer these services from an equity stance, so that's part of our strategic plan, but just as a what I am trying to track what the cohort throughout these and like kind of what our retention is on these populations, do we have an idea on what that looks like? Or, because I know sometimes it's a little bit like inventory as well, so.
Yeah, this is the more mobile population.
Yeah.
When you look at, until recently, the numbers would drop off at the high school, there would be attrition. So we have a larger population of these students at Goodwin, and they would not go to the middle school, not high school. We're seeing less of that now. And I have to say that's anecdotal as far as studying from the middle school to the high school, because I really don't know that we're ready to have that study yet, because it's been relatively recent. Certain populations of people, we're moving back and forth across the shoreline. It's not like they move far, they move across the shoreline from one community to another. I feel like we are seeing that less. As I watch monthly, kind of gives me the enrollment report, and I see less of that transitory migration in the last couple of years. I'm not sure what it means. I have a hunch, but it's only a hunch.
It does, like I said, my stance on land, right, we have properties regardless of them, but it would be interesting, to Dr. Fletcher's point, right, if we can intervene earlier in the process and really build, and that retention is also supporting that, and supporting maybe that safer place of choice for that type of population, where we have those offerings, and just kind of showing the investment kind of panning out over time. But not that we wouldn't do it, but that's not the case.
A longitudinal study of how do our efforts end up paying back in these student success. Yeah, that can come, if that 33 keeps moving up, then we will be able to do more and more of that over the next years.
Great.
And speaking of what Krista was mentioning about meeting with Bailey, and I'm just curious to know that this is not confidential, but it's making an interest. When you were talking about, students moving around, as to what was their draw from Job Safer parents, because they move because of their employment. And so that's why it's sometimes it's probably more transitory. So I just was, you're this answer, but maybe that is a question like, right? So they might say, oh, my brother was here, or right, or a relative.
Yeah, I would say anecdotally, I think a lot of times they have family members that are here, so they're trying family members because that's a place to live and somebody that might be able to assist them in all of the
It's such an American story. That the immigrant groups that come to this country find each other and settle together. That's certainly what happened in my family. And as a history buff, I'm fascinated to watch this, repeat itself. It is very interesting. Those intake documents also try to collect information about what's your history been like, what's your recent history been like, how did you get here? As I said in a previous meeting, some came on a plane, some not so lucky.
Exactly. Something maybe about the too. Yeah, maybe, yeah.
It just might be a point to start to like tell that story to the broader community, we think why this need is here and some of those points, again, like, we'll offer it regardless, right? Because the right thing to do about these backgrounds, even if you're one giving system, right, that they're, like, just from a framing, and as we tie this back to budget.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right, it is it's an important part of the narrative. Next slide. So this is a slide you see every year, different numbers. Our sustained services budget, the dollar amount it would cost to open the doors September 24th, we do nothing different. That would have resulted in a budget of $30,406,000. The administrators worked to come up with a budget based on what they really felt that they need. And I would imagine that you see a slight decline over the sustained services budget because you see a slight decline in enrollment. We also have some opportunities to renegotiate some things and have some savings. And that resulted in a $30,107,000 budget. Here at central office, we work to find savings, pare things down, look for new ways to achieve the same goals and still grow programs. And we are presenting you tonight with a $29,805,000 budget or 3.8% increase. It is under $1 million, the increase. It is driven, Pam will talk to you soon about this, but it is driven by all those big ticket items you hear about every year. Staffing, salaries, and benefits becoming more and more expensive. That's the same story any employer will tell you right now. We're not immune, we're not unique. Transportation continues to be an incredible expense. Actually, in our cases, in some years, serving special education as the third big expense, tuitions that is, and just the cost of living these days has increased so significantly that we expect to pay more for goods and services.
Okay, this slide shows that our zero-based budget process is reflected here. As you can see, changes over year, ebb and flow based on programmatic changes, enrollment changes, and this year's increase, although is significant in the major budget drivers to create the 3.38% increase, has been able to be mitigated from last year's increase of 4.94. I say last year's, which is in our current year, but it's what happens when you start working forward. So keeping that in mind, we budget for our actual needs each year, including our economic influences, such as Jan has already mentioned, inflation, cost of living, employment rates. We have right-sized our staffing as our enrollment has fluctuated, and that is reflected in this budget request. Next slide. Excellent. So broken down into 5 categories, we have the major components. We have our instructional staffing, the costs related to direct instruction to our students, our non-instructional staffing, our support, our secretarial, custodial, and activities that would include our stipends, our medical benefit increase for the projected year is currently anticipated at a 10% increase, waiting to have that finalized over the next several months. There is an increase in our capital plan request of $148,618. And the final residual dollar increase over the overall budget is $95,204, and that can be broken out into the remaining multiple categories. But the majority of our money, you can see between our instructional, our non-instructional, and our medical benefits is very heavy on the personnel side. Any questions on that? We get into, thank you, Trent, a little more detailed here. So for the two first categories that you saw on the other slide, we have certified staff. So our teachers and our administrators, our non-certified staff, which includes our paraeducators, our custodians, our secretaries, of which that 2 of those groups are currently under contract negotiation, our custodians and our paras. We're working on moving forward with those negotiations. And then our substitutes. Our substitutes, we have budgeted for an increase in our daily rates for our on-call subs, as well as the 1 per building substitute positions that we hire for 12 months, where they come in every day and fill in where needed. So that is reflective of increasing the rates to attract more subs as best as we can. In a time of high employment, you find the opposite, obviously, of lower employment, which right now is we're struggling to find people to work, and you have to be competitive. So we're proposing for next year, the anticipation is to increase those rates. For example, we're $135 a day for an on-call sub, and we're looking at potentially making that $145 a day. It's not, we're kind of treading water and keeping even. We're not winning the race by any means by that, but trying to balance that with our budget. We have also in the past year or 2 experienced higher utilization of long-term substitutes for a variety of reasons. We felt it necessary to put some additional funding there so that it is more of a known quantity and we don't have to reassess budget mid-year because of those situations. If they don't come to fruition, that's okay, but we're really basing it on our past experience over the past couple of years to right-size that. Our certified staff includes our contractual wage increases of 3.85%. Also, we have some anticipated degree changes. We also have an increased cost as our summer enrichment program. We're planning on continuing at a similar level as we have. And we've talked over the past couple of years, the COVID money that we received last year was the sunset of that supplemental funding to get that program running. And so we had budgeted for fiscal year 24, 50% of the cost of the staffing as that money sunset. And then for fiscal year 25, that's now going to be budgeted 100% within the district. Of all the programs that we funded with COVID money, this is one of the very few that our appropriated funds are continuing forward. We did as much work as we could with one-time methodical thinking of what we want to implement to get going that isn't going to carry a burden moving forward. I talked with people from other districts who have been told, you need to figure out where you're cutting, we're losing our COVID money. We need to know 12 people in your department, you know, which is, it's a really difficult place to be because when they still need those staff members, I'm grateful that we're in a better position, but therefore there is that little bit of bump up to carry that one program for summer enrichment moving forward. And
I have a question. So my understanding is that this slide is detail about the first 2 categories from the previous slide. Consider maybe carrying those icons into this slide so it's clear. Like you've got those 2 icons for instructional and non-instructional staff. So if you bring those icons onto the slide, it's clear that this is what we're talking about and it constitutes, this is what those two groups are made up of. Because that's not really clear.
Okay, we worked to try and clarify that. I'm not sure whether the icons can transfer over directly because of that instructional staffing. Some of them are certified and some of them are non-certified.
That one. We can do that.
No, right. Instructional does not equal certified. Instructional is made up of all three of these. But if you at least put them in the header, maybe.
Put the people icons on.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just says,
Yep.
like, these two icons are made up of these three things. And then when you say that a long-term substitute is hired for 12 months, is it 12 consecutive months? It's just a period of 12 months.
So the 12-month is we have in each building, we have what we call a daily sub. So we hire one person to work every single day of the school year.
Right.
That's a daily sub. We have our on-call subs, which go through frontline, take jobs here and there. And then we have, for certain situations where one teacher is going to be out for more than 2 weeks, we hire a certified teacher at a long-term sub rate. Now, that is generally a portion of the salary on our salary schedule. And it's for generally probably a month, at least a month. So it's one person in the same position and it's not for 12 months.
Okay, then
It's not for 12 months.
Okay.
You combined a couple of them together,
Okay.
but yeah.
Got it. Thank you. And do we have an average daily subs that are used, like on average, in addition to the?
Okay, so on average, and it's been very hard, honestly, since COVID to predict.
Right.
We have some days when I can go into frontline and we will have 8 or 9, 10 subs, which had been our average. That includes para subs. So they do have a different rate, but it's a total number. So, but sometimes those numbers can climb.
Yeah.
And it's not always a combination of illness. We're working on a lot of professional rounds. We're looking at a lot of professional development, which can tie into that.
And this is an area too, I think I recall you saying that you're experiencing increased absenteeism, right?
So, yeah, we were talking about the calendar. Yeah, we're experiencing, and then this again, talk to employers in any line of work, and everyone's experiencing increased absenteeism. Part of it is, we asked people to stay home while they were sick, right? And I think people are being, I know I certainly stayed home more with this illness than I would have in the past. Lightness, if you notice, these two keep moving away. So I think there is a heightened awareness, so I think that is part of it. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So, again, this slide looks very familiar. Again, the numbers have changed slightly. But in general, our percentages are pretty much in line with what they have been. There is no significant shift from one area to another. We remain having about 77% of our budget is salary and benefits, which is pretty much in line. It usually runs about 80%.
Slightly low. It's been slightly lower in the last 3 years, and I think that comes from right sizing staff.
Yes. Yes. We do have the opportunity based on these groupings. We do have some slides moving forward as well that have alternate groupings that if you were interested in taking a peek at the backup of the individual accounts that make up a certain piece of the pie, Trent can click on the legends and you can see here for the salaries. This is all salaries, certified, non-certified, which includes instructional, non-instructional substitutes. It also includes our summer program. For instance, I'd like you to look at the bottom line, account 165 for summer non-instructional. You see it's increased $42,000. That's the 50% sunset from losing those grant funds for the summer enrichment program. So that's a big increase. That's a big number there. There's a piece of it there in 165, and you can see also in summer certified staff, there's a piece of it there as well.
there any other one that you want us to click on right now, or would you peruse these on your own, whichever you prefer?
I just want to double check that, did they have access yet to the actual powers?
This is as good a time, so, when we put the packet together in your Google folders, you have a static PDF of the main presentation. Because Google and Microsoft don't play well together, so when I upload this presentation into Google, it messes with everything.
Doesn't let you.
So what I can do is I can email everybody the full PowerPoint, so that way you can.
And they'll be on our website too.
Yes, yeah.
And then you can drill into the links.
It go on to the superintendent's budget now, and then be changed to the board's budget once it's approved. Because it's all public document.
Yeah, we just want you to see it before it goes on the website at all.
Yeah.
But that way then you can do those clicking motions and drill into it, but right now what you have, they won't work.
Right, exactly.
So is there something else at this moment, or you wanna play with it? Okay. So our next slide is showing, we've consistently shown you these 4 drivers of our budget. They are really the big movers and shakers, so to speak. As we said, our salaries, which we just peeked at that one slide, overall, all salaries have increased $532,000. We've mentioned, the reasons for some of those. Our benefits, I've also mentioned that we anticipated $10% increase on our premiums for the upcoming year, and that's reflected in that graphic. Our tuitions, which include our special education tuitions as well as our magnet tuitions, we're seeing a drop that is largely driven by a reduced number and or cost of outside placements for special education students. And with that, we have a reduced cost of transporting those special education students. So yes, although you have voted on an increased transportation contract, offset by that is the reduction in outside transportation for special education placements. So although it seems to be counterintuitive, that's why the overall transportation number is showing a decrease for the upcoming budget.
The salaries would actually be a larger increase than what you're seeing there. But again, with some attrition, with some retirements that have been announced early, and I'm very grateful to those folks for doing that. We were able to make some reductions in staffing. Certified staff.
For the tuition decrease, is that because we've had changes in the needs for those out of district placements, or is that because we have done things that have actively brought services into the district?
Yes. Right? Yeah. So we had that 18 to 21 program in-house, which is very successful for certain students. We have students at our high school that 10 years ago never would have been in a public traditional high school, and they're thriving. So I think we have brought people in-house when the programs that we have here were best suited. Anything else you want to add to that, Sarah? And it is also partly just the situation we find ourselves in right now. That's that unpredictability. Someone can move in and the numbers can change.
So because the 18 to 21 program seems to be, really taking off. Do you ever have any of the other public schools around asking to tuition the students in?
Haven't had anybody, right? We're with Lime already, but we haven't had any.
Yeah.
What happened?
Which question?
It happened. And that would be something we'd consider if we felt that our program, could offer something that they couldn't get in their own school.
Yeah.
Because they're so highly specialized.
And on the benefits, aren't we getting consortium though? with the benefits?
We are, and that is the anticipated increase through ECHMC, which is our cooperative. At this point, looking at experience over the past several months and what is expected to move forward. The benefit of the consortium is that there are a number of towns and schools together. And so as experience fluctuates, one town can have a really kind of off year, and that's what happens with smaller groups. It absolutely happens. That's why you go together in a bigger group, is because in a smaller group, which is what we would be considered if we were on our own, you have those ebbs and flows of experience, and then you get hit with that increase because you have bad experience. And then it's being in the group allows that to smooth a bit. So whereas other groups have had poor experience in going together, it moderated their increase. Our experience of late in our group itself hasn't been favorable. So if we were in a group of our own, we would not be seeing a 10% potential increase.
Seems like a huge number. I'm looking at the increase in salaries, 530,000, and benefits of 280,000. That's just a huge percent of salary. But why?
It's, well, our plans are, our insurance plans are very, very robust. They are high deductibles. We've certainly done things to negotiate, but, there's no doubt about it that public sector insurance plans, medical insurance plans are healthier than most people experience in the private sector. We have a slide, a few slides from now that will show you the history of the insurance increases. And you can see that overall, we are still trending really well compared to the state. But we knew when we were going through COVID and our numbers were so low that we were able to do like 0 one year. We knew there was going to be a backlash. We knew that many people weren't seeing doctors and they weren't getting things identified. Well, I think that's changed now. And I think we're seeing the post-COVID impact.
And you're seeing, I mean, more people are just getting sick because of reduced immune system, right? You're sicker now than you might have been previously, and so I think that's, we're seeing that everywhere.
Yeah.
Do we ever break down our costs on what benefits and insurance to like per building? You know, break it down, like what our cost is at the central office per person, what our cost is per,
No,
per, no?
no.
Curious if it was all about the same, cost us about the same per person in each building.
Yeah, no, we've never broken it down that way. We have a per member, PMPM, per member per month, expenditures, broken down, by district in the consortium, but we don't break them down by individual. Matter of fact, we avoid that because then you could be violating, you know, so we're really careful about what we even know about these people. But we can certainly show you the PMPM documents, get a sense of what plans are costing
Yeah, what is that?
per member per month. Per member per month, if that's
We get that, but that's not broken down
right.
for your central office versus high school versus
No.
middle school.
No.
And are you thinking more of by category of employee, like administrator versus
Yeah.
secretary versus custodian?
Yeah,
No, we don't have that. If we did have it by building, it would be all of those types of employees together.
Right.
So it wouldn't be broken out by employee type.
Wages.
Okay, so teacher contracted wage increase, this is the same slide as last time. Because it is that same point in time as when we negotiated. Obviously, contracts that are being negotiated this year can be significantly different, particularly in our current economic climate compared to where we negotiated last year. But just as a reminder that for fiscal year 25, our average increase is 3.85%, whereas at the state, it was 3.97. So we're still ahead of the game, but you can also see there was a difference during that time period across the state when contracts were negotiated, that it looks like most of theirs got more upfront. In the middle and the lesser in the third year, ours was a little bit of the reverse. So we do expect to see that change next year, but for this year, we are still below what the state was negotiating as an average.
Again, offset by, some reduction of staff, like that's not unusual.
which is the next slide. So this slide reflects the FTE adjustments made over the last 7 years, as well as the proposed reduction for 3 FTEs, and that's gonna all be through attrition, confirmed at this point. So we know for certain that it's through attrition for 3 FTEs in the upcoming year to continue to right-size our staff for our enrollment and programmatic changes. Okay, our popular per pupil expenditure compared with our average daily membership. These are both calculations by the state. The state takes our end of the year financial information as well as, believe it or not, our daily attendance and creates an average daily membership, which is, the consideration of the average number of students per day who were in attendance and divided our expenditures by that. And they include some things and they pull some things out, and their very special magical formula is supposed to be consistent across districts. And you can see there is absolutely an economy of scale. With Westbrook having an average daily membership of 625 students, and the resulting per pupil expenditure comes to over $30,000. We work our way down for Essex, Deep River, and Chester, which of course has a regional middle school and high school. And although they have a higher average daily membership, their per pupil expenditure is higher, and that's on the basis of their financial makeup. They have a separate budget for elementary for each of those towns, and then they have a shared for the regional piece. And so when you work at that math, it doesn't work out as you would expect it to, because although it's a larger district, your reduced economies of scales when you have 3 elementary schools working independently. So we work down into, we're running right at the middle at a little over $25,000 per pupil, with an average daily membership of 1,055. I know that looks different from our October 1 number. Again, they based that on our attendance percentage. And of course, over the past couple of years, students have been out more, as well as the same as staff has been out more. But that's that's pretty consistent across these districts that we're looking at. Lime Old Lyme is at 23,000, and we have Clinton, which is running right there at 23,000 as well. And they're fairly close in average daily membership. So you can definitely see here the economies of scale, and we are right in the middle of that path. Any questions? All right. History of health insurance increases. We've already spent some time on this. You can see the years where we were well below trend in the state of Connecticut. We did have 2018-19 where we were above. We kind of regrouped and got some of that back in 21-22 when we were able to do a reduction. Had an additional reduction the following year, had a moderate increase this current year. And really, we're expecting our 10% increase to really be right on trend with the state average of increases. So we're not out there and crazy, but we're going to make sure that we have the funding moving forward and that it's appropriately leveraged, that our reserves for incoming claims, we are self-insured. It is a cooperative, but we are self-insured. And this also is a discussion that's made through the group and voted on through the group as to where we'll end up. And I believe, Jan, that's going to be in the next few months, usually March. Okay.
And we want to get as many quarters behind us as possible, because we base our rate on the rolling 12.
Okay, we briefly mentioned as well that our monthly health insurance rates And this is for the Old Saybrook Teachers Plan versus the state teachers plan. Is well below what the state is offering cost wise. So even with our experience with our rates, whether it be a custodial group, a teacher group, and an administrator group, the plans actually are very similar. The coverage is very similar. There aren't great differences there. But we are still doing really well to make sure we're spending the town's money appropriately. We're giving good benefits, a very good benefit package to our teachers. But for a cost that we are managing with incentives for wellness initiatives and so forth. To work forward to keep us in a position where we can keep our cooperative plan that allows us the flexibility within negotiations with different groups. That we can be flexible. Keep in mind, the state plan is a plan. It's the plan. And either you accept it or you don't. There's no opportunity to, let's include this or let's tweak that.
You'll remember that we did not want to get involved with the plan. We had significant concerns about the way they were accepting members, accepting groups. I think we all need to pat ourselves on the back. Clearly, we made the savings already.
Okay, so similar to the pie, but in a couple of different groupings, we have expenditure groups. That Trent can click on, as you want to select maybe one or two of them, such as transportation. That we have discussed that we expect a reduction in that overall cost. But with the full PowerPoint version, you can click in and through these. And these lines that you're seeing will line up with the narrative in the budget book, where there's discussion and narrative to explain what's in that category, as well as sometimes some discussion as to what might have changed or any particular assumptions for that year. So it is both in the PDF version of your budget book, just in a chart, and you can drill through it here. Is there something else in particular you want to see at this moment? Or we can move on. The proposed capital plan, this shows you everything that Julie had built and put together for the expectation for this upcoming budget year, including the middle school gym, to have the walls painted, the floor refinished, adding the fencing for softball dugouts, adding a vent for the art room for the additional work that they're doing with clay and pottery. And looking at repairing, hopefully we can repair versus replace the dividing gym wall at the middle school, which I believe is, has been there for quite some time. And is definitely looking to keep that as a dividing wall versus a curtain for various, and fairly important reasons. If we can all do it. Gonna briefly go through, I'm gonna skip the first thing at the high school, sealing the parking lot. The floor refinish is something we do every year, and that's just the regular maintenance of it. We're looking to replace some library shelving up at the high school. The original built-ins are original built-ins. And so we're looking at what our options are for upgrading and refurbing that. Art room, classroom furniture, and ABC is art, band, and chorus. They have a computer lab, and so looking to move that lab into more modular furniture, small group collaboration. And going back to the track resurfacing, this is not a total redo of the track. This is just resurfacing it a little bit more than sealing it and filling the cracks. This is a portion of what we're going to need. It was recommended that we try and bridge this repair over 2 budget years. And looking at, because I believe Julie said it was 3, 4 close to $400,000. And how we kind of structure that, as you know, we can't just put money to set aside in 2.5 years to get this done. So looking at how we can do that, get a part of it done in June and the remainder of it done in the following July, with the second year's, budget money. So out of the increase in the overall capital plan, a large part of that increase is just that $125,000.
How old is the shop?
is it 10 years now, 9 years?
I think it's about 10 years, and from what we've been told, it is normal use. It's not unexpected at this point to have that maintained.
But don't we also have a turf replacement coming up sometime soon and?
Yeah, we think another.
There'll be
About.
a carpet replacement coming up, down the road after that, at least a couple of years after that. And I did double check. One does not impact the other. I did ask, I said, if we do the track and then they have to come in and do the carpet, are they gonna ruin what we just did? No.
I just remember within the last year, we were talking about the carpet, the replacement of the turf, and that number back within the last year was $500,000. Now we're talking $400,000 for the track. These are big numbers.
Exactly, and when this was originally looked at, knowing it was coming up, getting some idea of cost 2 years ago, it was in the $100,000 to $200,000 range. But the materials and everything else, and this is off of state bid. This isn't even, way out there contractor price. This is the state bid price to do this fix. And that's why when it was updated and we had sticker shock, we had to come up with an idea of how we can do this within the budget and do it, without having that hit all at once. So that's why the plan is to try and bridge it, and the town is aware of, that's what we're going to be trying to do, and working with them on how that works and what that looks like. When we can't say, we're not allowed by statute, we can't say, we want to put $125,000 in this budget. We don't really plan on spending it, but we want you to take it and put it in an account. We're not structured that way, we can't do that. So we have to kind of finesse how that's gonna work. So we're really trying very hard. We always try very hard not to go out to bond for projects like this. We're looking to get this done in a way that doesn't put any additional, other than obviously the cost that it's gonna cost, burden on the taxpayer for bonding and interest payments and having loans going out over 20 years. That doesn't seem appropriate.
Yes.
So I just think it's important.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
I think it's important just to remind, when you're doing this presentation, remind everybody that this track is heavily used by the community as well.
Okay,
Often seeing
definitely.
runners and.
How bad is the track right now anyway?
Sorry?
How bad is the track right
It's ready. It's ready to be replaced. We're not getting ahead of the curve. We're on it.
now? I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Where it stands.
Yeah.
There's going to be a safety concern. too.
Yeah. So it's nice.
Julie said, because I did ask her that question as well, said that we probably have a year to be able to work with it barring some significant change. So it's not an immediate safety hazard, but knowing what the cost is, we definitely have to plan with it.
Yeah, something happened, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it is important to stress we're probably a couple of things, that it's not only the schools that are using this, but it is the community that's using it. Number two, before we put this in, one of the reasons that we put this turf field in was because the utilization of the amount of fields that we have in Saybrook that are regulation size were not only the high school, but all of the recreational programs to use or practice on or have that's allowed increased access for not only just the school programs, but also the recreation and travel teams, all of the clubs, et cetera, on the other fields that potentially were being utilized by others, and also the cost of just how often we were having to let the fields go fallow because they were muddy and you could use them, and all of the maintenance that we're having to do on those are added costs too. So I know it looks like a big hit all at once, but that might be something that we want to take a look at in terms of like how much percentage more increase we have for access for sports and activities.
And this isn't for like taking it up and redoing it. It's really just it's better than the Band-Aid. It's in between.
We were out of crisis, to your point, Kelly, with fields because there was no access to, one student had been, I think, they were 12 years old. There was no access to regulation fields. It was always our fields. Our fields were destroyed. Remember, we can't use any kind of pesticides by law. So that wasn't, we're not allowed to get rid of the grubs, which was further decreasing the ability to grow grass. So we put in water to some of our fields, so irrigated some of our fields and put in that turf field. We have not had that push-pull anxiety about, no, you tell people you cannot use it, sorry. And we don't have kids playing on dirt and mud. We have them playing on grass. Our fields look fantastic now, but that was quite an investment. And of course, that investment also means maintenance, you know. And so, yeah, so Steve, to your point, we are going to be looking at a new carpet. I think maybe 5 years is where we are. And so that should pop into the capital projects, 5-year capital project list next year.
And that I believe Julie has as a named capital project.
Yes.
So, would be at that level, that would be kind of, hello, town.
Yeah, we need to have some money in there.
Yeah.
It comes down like for any of our police force, you have a vehicle replacement, right? Like this is just something that's going to be an ongoing needed, that it just has to start to become part of the, I know it's newer for us still, but it needs to become part of like the permanent terminology of.
Well, we did have a surface track previously. It wasn't, before we put the turf in, we did have a track like this. It was many years before that it was gravel. So, you know, that piece of it isn't necessarily new, but just unbelievable, the changing cost. Absolutely unbelievable.
We got so much pushback. I remember when we were going, looking into irrigation and all that, but I remember when my kids were playing on the field. Field hockey, for example, that, you know, games were interrupted constantly because the dust and dirt that was thrown around that, you know, was getting in your eyes, and it was so, you know, you can't both ways. That's cost. We have to maintain these fields.
And it's for the whole town. It's not for our kids, but but it's also for the whole town.
Is there anything else in the capital that we should be considering? So we've had like a number of things kind of happen at the middle school this year with like the heating and all of the different things. Like, is there anything else that we're missing or we should be considering that we're not?
My early stages.
I know it's a big thing.
No, I believe Julie worked with the custodians and everything on this, and that they've looked through the things that would be coming up. Obviously, we did not know that heat was going to be an issue in the middle school cafeteria, which has been resolved. And that was resolved within our maintenance budget. So we do have that line item for those ad hoc things because they are going to come up. Much like our homes, but on a much bigger scale. You know, guess we need to, you know, have the septic pumps, and wasn't expecting that bill, but it was gonna be that, or it was gonna be something else. So we're not in a position at this point that it's causing us concern with our day-to-day budget.
The only thing I would tell you, as a board, as a district, to keep an eye on is this HVAC. Because we are up against it, we've been facing it. One of the last things Julie did was apply for the grant to try to get reimbursed for Goodwin. But right now, the deadline for that is written into legislation for bringing our schools into compliance with the ASHRA standards for air quality and air temperature, which would not be achievable in our schools certain months without air conditioning. The deadline's pretty, it's coming up. I'm on that committee that's supposed to be advising the legislators on how to move forward with this, and I think we're gonna have some success, but we're not gonna avoid it altogether. It's supposed to come with money. We all know that it won't come with enough money. So be watching that legislation, be watching that information as it's coming forward, that's gonna land here as well as everywhere else. What we're hoping they'll do is stagger it, so you don't end up having to do all your schools in 2 years, you know.
But knowing that it's coming, I got built on everyone's subscription fair, right? Like knowing that it's coming, you know, that we have buildings, kind of, right? Like it needs to run a middle school. We don't have that set up yet. Like, is there?
We don't, we got some preliminary stuff set up, so we've looked at multiple ways to do the middle school. One is less expensive up front, which is putting in mini splits, in all of the rooms. That may be over a longer period of time, a period of 10 or 15 years might become more expensive because we'll be replacing those all the time. They're not homes, you know, you don't turn them on and turn them off one person, they're everybody. And the one that's more expensive is to put the full unit system in. We'll have to see what the third round of grants are. And we do have some of that preliminary work done, so if the grants get announced soon, which I heard is supposed to be announced next month. Let's see, we can start rolling forward on that.
So definitely outside of AC.
I'm gonna go to our last screen, just to move us along, unless there's another question on that. This is really our conclusion screen. This is just wrapping it all up. You know, our budget supports our plan. That's why we started with the plan. You heard our administrators talk about it. We never want to ignore our facilities. I said from the day I walked in here, I think our facilities are very well taken care of. My understanding is a previous board learned their lesson by not investing in facilities and ended up having to bond for maintenance. You never want to be there. So well done, board, and well done to the team. Legislative mandates continue to have increasing expense associated with them and not a whole lot of money coming our way. We know that our taxpayers are under the same burden we are. They're paying more for services and goods, and we understand that. Thankfully, we live in a community where property taxes are reasonable. If you compare to other communities, you see just how reasonable. We recognize ourselves as an asset to the community. We know that we owe the community to be that gem that draws people here. And we continue to see ourselves as that and try to keep things as polished as possible. We are continuing to work on the college and workplace skills. We're going to have that presentation on the tech ed, which I hope you'll find informative. Sarah's been meeting with the school career folks and the guidance folks about, meshing that team even more. We have our contractual obligations, which we've gone over, and the changing demographics, which we've gone over. And of course, you don't want to stand still, right? If you're not developing new things and you're not growing things, then you're going backwards. And so we constantly have to elevate. And that's, we did not do the grant slides. You can look at those yourselves. Those are the same every year as well. They just tell you what we get for grants, what we spend it on. And we included that a few years ago because somebody on the Board of Finance wanted to know about grants. And so we thought, okay, it's there in case we're asked. Yeah. I want to thank the team for stepping in tonight. They learned just today that I was going to need them to present and see what a marvelous job they did. Back to
Before we move on, I'm gonna ask Trina, any comments or you want to add, Trina?
No, I think this was a really well done presentation and definitely you guys really stepped up to support you very nicely. Excuse me. This was our first time. We had seen the presentation before, but we didn't see the details. We got them or you got them as budget books. So that's what I have to say.
I'll make sure you have what I have.
Is there, so we will come back next time, I'm assuming, and answer questions, or do you have some questions you would like to take away now and look up?
I have a question, regarding page 55, it talks to I've been on the, budget fiscal committee with Karina, and like you said, we saw this level of detail before, but that was about the extent of it. So on page 55, if I remember correctly, I was interested in, account 810, which is probably not used to, AM or Jan, but, and I pulled the threads for a completely different reason, which may or may not be evident, but now I think I'd like to see the sweater, and I think we're asking for a large increase in that particular account, over $25,000 from last budget, and then I think we were up about 20,000 the year before. And I think what I'd like to see, either budget fiscal committee or maybe the whole board can get this, is an accounting of why the number is going up so drastically. You know, $25,000 in dues and fees. Okay, maybe inflation is hitting and a lot of these places are asking for more for their fees. But I'd like to see an accounting under the hood of, you know, which ones are going up and perhaps maybe even rationale as to why they're going up so much. And maybe, you know, look at, are some of these things that we absolutely need, or things that we like to have to the niceties, and maybe they could be pared down. I certainly don't want to reduce the amount of dues and fees going out to the teachers for educational expenses or professional organizations if they're absolutely needed, but I just haven't seen the justification that all these are being accounted for.
Yeah, we can get that for you. I can share with you that we do have a process. The process is the same for reviewing dues and fees as it is for everything else. And we do, I can think of sitting with an administrator right now and saying, we need 3 of these memberships, you know, so we do get to that level. But let's pull it up again and look at it in the next board meeting. Anything else you want for the next board meeting? Because I don't want to pressure you, but I'm also cognizant of the time limit on the other side with the town. So it looks like our town meeting is going to be that first week in March. I was just in communication with the first selectman today. They do want to see us, and it can go as the superintendent's budget to the Board of Finance, or it can go as the board's budget to the Board of Finance on February 6th. Tuesday the 6th. So just keeping that in mind, and I know you guys have a busy schedule with other things that you're doing, so didn't know if you wanted to have another special meeting of the whole Board of Ed.
Right, so our timeline is, we have another board meeting next week.
Right.
Right, and then is it the following week, that's the presentation to the Board of Finance?
I believe the week after that.
So there's a 2-week break between. It's,
Yeah.
Because, so, you know, I do think that there are some conversations we should have about some of the proposed additions to the budget. And I wonder if we'd like to have those in a budget and fiscal meeting, so there's some clarity. I'm looking at you, because I know you're.
I'm certainly amenable to that, sure.
Yeah. And we
I
don't.
mean, it depends on how detailed the entire, that's
Yeah,
what
right.
we do all the dirty work, so the entire
Right.
board doesn't have to listen through or wade through pages and pages of spreadsheet.
Yeah, we
But
appreciate
that's up to you. So I'm game for having, I forget who was on it. Kelly.
So would you guys be willing to have a meeting between, like, after the next board meeting and but before the, right?
We'll do it after the next board meeting. You'll have to call the special board meeting to approve.
To approve it, because we don't have a board meeting before the. Okay. Or do we have it between now and next week? That's the other thing, kind of jumped up. Yeah, we don't schedule it tonight, but, okay, so you guys are willing to have a budget and fiscal between now and next Tuesday, so that we can.
Yeah, that's the only, I mean, the presentation looks good and it looks very standard
Yeah.
compared to years past, so I don't have any major issues. I just wanted to see some of the underlying data before I made the decision.
It's just that one account, right?
Correct, so if you can.
Yeah.
Can respond to that quickly, then we can probably take care of it quickly.
So you had a meeting, and it's on the agenda for next Tuesday.
We're gonna need to, yeah. Either way, we should put this on the agenda for next Tuesday. We have a great discussion. Yeah.
Found out.
From close standpoint, the budget fiscal meeting have to be either Friday or Monday. We obviously
Weekend.
Gee,
Well.
you're being what you're saying.
Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so. Anytime between now and Friday.
Well,
The notice to the
it
public.
can't be tomorrow
Oh,
because we would
Oh,
have
right,
had to
so
have noticed
Friday's
it
today.
today.
And I can't do Friday night.
Yeah, exactly. Was that something you can do by, that one? Virtual? Send out the detail.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we send out the detail to everybody?
Right, yeah, I'd like to see.
And then if that elicits a whole bunch of questions, then we know we need to do something and get from.
Okay. I'd like to see this also, yes.
Okay.
Just a question too, this is in the shift soccer, and I just wondering on that percentage of utilization for some village.
We'll have to, we have that data, the percentage of utilization for summer enrichment. I know it was good, but do you have that data with you tonight?
We had, that's the other day, we had on nearly 15.
So it's a little over 10%.
Yeah.
It's a success. It's actually a monster. It's such a success.
Yeah.
I know it's been like a good increase, it's one of the things that we're now self-funding, so I just wanna make sure if we're getting any like questions about that increase after the budget, with the swap of the COVID funding, that we can answer that.
And what does that do? Like, does it gain them, is it just really a nice to have in the summer, or does it contribute to completion of learning requirements, or help supplement maybe where students may have been falling short? Like, is it, or is it just, we have these great summer programs? You know what I mean? Like, does it contribute to learning requirements? Students?
It's both. It's a nice to have, but also we have, last year, we opened it up to our adult population. So we provided more English language services to our children. Our degree environment where students are having more application of their learning from the school year. So in terms of math, we have that as the at Goodwin School, for example, we have one program called fractions, where students are actually using their math skills and fraction skills to actually build recipes. So it's like, it's all of the application parts of learning that we may not have the opportunity to get to inside of the classroom. At the high school level, students have the opportunity to earn half a credit to a credit towards one of their graduation requirements. So depending on the level, it's a nice to have, but it's really utilizing all of the skills that students are doing throughout the year and taking it further and further application. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that initially when it was started, there's really opportunities for teachers to see different ways that they could be utilizing instruction. And during that time, based on the consulting we had, Janet, I can't remember that word. Right? And so then that was really great professional development, and the teachers would be like, wow, and so they're taking that way of teaching and learning and bringing it to the classroom. So it's not, like you were saying, it's not like directed toward special ed, it's not a summer program.
No, I know it's.
I'm just sharing that, that's a different dimension,
Right.
that was essential
Well, and
for
if that's
staff.
the thing we're tracking, are they bringing it back and expanding it to the other teachers? Because, right, because I know there was a concentrated population of teachers who were,
Yeah.
and so now it's.
That whole Main Street math program really started through the learning of PBL by the teachers in that summer program, and it just built upon itself.
Okay, like, move along here. So we're gonna put the budget on the next agenda. And we'll go for the information, on the accounts. Okay, the next on the agenda is our Goodwin Resident residency request.
Is it possible for the administrators to head up?
Yes.
Yeah.
They will.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate it. So this is a request, for a family. You've seen these before. You can see the name there on the document. They would like to keep their students in, Kathleen Goodwin School for the remainder of the academic year, even though they have moved out of district. And this is something that both the principal and I support, to keep their, learning consistent for the remainder of the year.
They make the motion to. Second. Have any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Next item is we have a leave of absence request.
Oh, this is a very good example of what families are looking to live longer themselves. We have some young staff and starting families. And so we have a teacher who is looking for a leave of absence from mid-November through January 2nd, 2025. And that's one of those family matters. And I ask that we support that request.
Is it area of, well, I guess I should ask the question after the motion.
Yeah, make a motion to,
Do I have a second? Questions?
Is it relevant at all, the area of focus of the teacher is responsible for? You know, as far as cost? No, like, is the math teacher, is it, I don't know if that's relevant or.
This is the health PE teacher.
Okay. That's just.
Yeah, no. it's a good question.
Leave of absence is unpaid leave of absence.
During FML time, they're paid.
They're using up their
They use up
sick
their
time.
time, and then they can take unpaid leave, and pay their own insurance portion. Which holds their position, also allows them to buy back time from CRB later in their career, so it has advantages.
So is this individual gone through their FMLA and is currently looking for the unpaid portion?
Is going to go through FML and will be looking for the unpaid portion, yeah, and then leave of absence. Okay. All right, can you take a vote on that?
Make a motion from the second.
Yeah, all in favor?
The moment of that.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Now I'm looking for a motion to go into executive session for purposes of discussing Old Saybrook education, MOUs, superintendent search, and inviting Jan Butcher into executive session. So moved. Second. We're in executive session. Absolutely. All right.
Multiple.
Here, I mean.
You're back on.
Okay, it's 9:54, we're going on to executive session. Karen?
First, I'm gonna make a motion to approve the Oak Saybrook Superintendent Refined Performance Criteria document.
Name second. Discussion? All on favor, who seconded the?
Jack.
Jack. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So moved.
Okay, then I'm gonna make a motion to approve the Oak Saybrook stakeholder feedback report and leader profile.
May I have a second on that? Sure. Jim? Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So moved.
How do you decide to do this? Motion to approve the. This one. Motion to approve the MOA between OSBOE and OS Education Association. Oh, wait, should I be? What's the motion?
Move to approve, is this the sick time or the first one time?
Sick time.
Sick time.
Right, so that's what we got.
Sick time memorandum of understanding with the Ulster Education Association.
As amended.
That's, we're just gonna do that as amended.
The motion of Karen and a second. Second, Kelly. Discussion. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. The second one I have, these facts. Personal time and mind of understanding the.
That's also as amended.
Anyway, as amended.
Okay, the motion by Karen, I have a second. Second by Kelly. Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. That's a motion, Karen. And motion to. Second. Favor?
Third, fourth.
Second in the motion.
Jack.
Yeah, Kelly. Adjourn.
Thank you all.
Thank you. So,
Brad, anything up?
No, I do not.
next Tuesday, we have that special achievement, unique